Democratic State Representative and Speaker Tempore, Joe Moody of El Paso. Thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, given the devastating and the horrific flooding that we have seen in central Texas, Governor Abbott has said that the legislature will address all these issues from top to bottom in the upcoming legislative session that starts on July 21st. Speaker Burrows says that the lawmakers are ready to get to work. And so I'm wondering, what do you think that looks like, and what would you like to see come out of this session?
Well, I think first and foremost, um, just this is an unspeakable tragedy. Have to offer all of my prayers to those affected. It's one of those moments that you can't really believe is happening, and it's just it's one of those. It's a tragedy that is continuing to unfold, and so we have a lot of work to do when it comes to the why and the how, and I think that's what the legislature is going to be tasked with doing. That's a long-term conversation. I was one of two legislators sent down to Uvalde in what was a man-made tragedy, but our task there was similar. We need to know why and how this happened and what we can do going forward. But on top of that, there's an immediate need. We've heard both the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker that there are systems we can put in place that we can pay for now regarding flood warnings, and that's something that the legislature should absolutely take up. But we can't lose sight of the fact that there are through lines through this tragedy and other tragedies we've seen in Texas dealing with communications in crisis and the interoperability of these systems. And so, yes, we can do the here and now, but we also have to look towards the future. I think the people that we represent expect us to do that, and I think that's the work that we have in front of us come the 21st.
You mentioned a lot, and so I want to take a closer look. Just in the here and the now, the lieutenant governor has said he would like to have outdoor warning sirens in Kerr County, certainly along the Guadalupe River. The county leaders have said that they don't have that because of the cost. So is this something you think the state can go right in, pay for this, put these up so that they are in place for next summer?
The state of Texas has resources at its disposal to put those in place. We also have a flood plan across the state of Texas. So if there are other areas that would be susceptible to this type of tragedy, then we need to be thinking about that right now. And I think that's something, that's a conversation that we all need to be engaged in and involved in. But I think, like I said, this is something that is this is something that we need to think about in a broader way, because there are tragedies that can be visited upon any one of our communities in a myriad of ways, and there are similarities to some of the failures we've seen in the past. And that's the work that we have ahead of us, not just in the special session, but going forward, is making sure that communities have the resources they need to prepare for whatever may come next.
I was going to ask you about taking a broader look, not just in Kerr County, which is a known area, to have this kind of massive and horrible flooding, but across the state as well. And do you think that will come out of this session?
Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon us to do that work. Whether it was the wildfires in the Panhandle, or some of the, like I mentioned before, the shooting in Uvalde. There are multiple systemic failures that we saw that led to those tragedies being far more horrific than they should have been. And so it's if we're being called back with this work in front of us, we need to plan not just for next year, but for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. That's what the people we represent expect of us.
And I wanted to ask you, because when you're talking about the interoperability of communications, you were a co-author, I believe, of House Bill 13, which did pass the House during the regular legislative session, didn't get out of the Senate. What happened there, if you can tell us, and talk to us about the highlights of the legislation?
Sure. House Bill 13, which was authored by Chairman Ken King, who's from the Panhandle, and it was born of the conversations post wildfire. right? But the reason I got involved in it and was asked to be involved in it was because of my work uh, in the Uvalde tragedy, because there were communication errors there. There was a lack of ability to communicate across agencies, and that led to, in my opinion, led to more suffering, more death in that tragedy than should have been. And so that's the bill itself was built to create a infrastructure fund over time that local governments could call upon when they saw needs in their community. So the folks like we're hearing from in Kerr County that had cost cost barriers, that they would have a partner in the state of Texas to build up that infrastructure. And that's, when you talk about the weight of government and the power of government to do good work in the community, this is what it exists to do, because it can do it on a scale and on a level that Kerr County can't do. The communities in the Panhandle can't do, like Uvalde couldn't do. And so this is the opportunity for us to put the full weight, power, and heft of the state of Texas, our resources, in place so that we can mitigate emergencies and tragedies like this, or in some instances, prevent them altogether.
And on this day, you and I are speaking. Representative Drew Darby sent Governor Abbott a note requesting that the governor put legislation similar to House Bill 13 on the call for the special session. Is that something you would support? Sounds like it.
Yeah, I absolutely support that. I think Chairman Darby is certainly correct in putting that forward. I think it's a conversation that we have to have right now. I think the people expect us to have. And there's, like I said, there's two lanes of conversation. There is the immediacy of the tragedy that we're seeing in front of us, and that's something that we have to address. But if we only do that, then we're not doing our job. We have to look towards we have to look towards the future to figure out how we can best prepare and maybe even prevent tragedies like this from happening in the future. I think House Bill 13 would have gone a long way in doing that for future events. Chairman Darby is certainly correct in saying that we should take that up during this special session. We have the opportunity to do that, and we definitely should.
And I'm just wondering, as far as, are you going to have, because I know back in 2021, during that horrible winter storm that caused all the blackouts, we had 254 people die, according to the state, in those storms and the power outages. There were hearings right then and there because it happened during the legislative session. Are you anticipating hearings, bringing in experts from all different fields, et cetera, bringing the people in from these local communities to discuss this, have these question and answer periods with lawmakers so that they have an idea of exactly what needs to be done here?
Yeah, I think that's something that we have to do, right? To gather that information so that we can build good, sound policy on top of that experience. That whether it was during Winter Storm Uri or the Uvalde tragedy or the wildfires or these current floods, the speaker has said as much. We need to be guided by that expertise and that experience so that we understand when we're putting something in place that it is going to help solve the problems that we've seen. I think that's the type of information we need to be informed, so that we're not just reacting. We are doing something that is proactive to make sure that tragedies like this are, like I said, could be mitigated in the future, or in some instances maybe could be completely prevented.
And Governor Abbott has said that he has told members of the Central Texas community that Texas is not going anywhere. They are going to be there. The state's going to be there for the long term, not only to find all the missing in the short term, but rebuilding as well. What do you make of that?
I think the governor is correct. This is a long-term project. Uh, Look, there's some hurt that we can't heal through state dollars or infrastructure planning. Um, that can be, you know, that can go a long way to rebuilding and trying to get our arms around a broader problem. But some of this hurt is never going to go away for these families. This is an unspeakable tragedy for them. sending their children away to camp, which is supposed to be a formative and beautiful and amazing time, and instead has turned to the darkest moment in their lives. Outside of writing bills and sending money to these areas, we need to keep these folks in our thoughts and in our prayers. That has got to be a part of what we do, because putting your arms around these folks is what is going to allow them to start to go through that healing process. I know that firsthand when we encountered a shooting here in El Paso on August 3rd, 2019, strangers from across the state, across the nation, they wrapped their arms around us. They lifted us up. They were here for us. And we need to be here for our neighbors in Central Texas and around the state where some of those victims came from. That's an important part of this process. And that's not a bill, and that's not a dollar amount. That's just being good neighbors to those of us, to those folks that are suffering so much right now. And on top of that, we have to provide solutions going forward.
I hear you say that, and sometimes you see people, ridicule, lawmakers or leaders for saying, we have to come together, we have to, hug the people who are going through this tragedy, and they ridicule that. And here you are saying how vital it was for you and your community in El Paso going through that back in 2019.
Yeah, I don't understand. I'll never understand the ridicule, because it is an important part of it. The humanity of all this is important, and seeing each other as human beings going through difficult times and suffering. Being there for people in all of those ways is incredibly important. It doesn't mean that we don't get to ask hard questions. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have to hear very uncomfortable facts about what did or didn't happen. Those things happen as well. But all of those are important to bring about the healing process, and to be really good stewards of our state and to be good neighbors. We have to do all those things at the same time, and that's not an impossible task.
I did have one other question, and I appreciate your time, and that was over the weekend, you had really reached out to your fellow lawmakers. You reached out to Representative Jared Patterson, who we've also spoken with, about, raising money. And I'm just wondering why that was so important to you, and how has your fundraising effort gone?
It's a piece of the puzzle and what we can do. And Chairman Patterson reached out to me, and Jared's a good friend, and Jared and I both have kids, that look just like the kids that we're seeing on the news right now. And I know that Texans across the state have that similar experience. What would I do? What would I do in this circumstance? And you feel helpless. And so this is one of the ways we can step up and lock arms. And we know that tragedy is not a partisan issue, and neither is standing up and helping those out who need help. And so that's what it was born out of, was a desire to do help and find a place to put our energy. And we reach out to our colleagues to do the same thing. And it's been overwhelming support from everybody in the building, and including staff and government relations teams, and former members have reached out to us and have donated as well. And certainly encourage anybody who's able to do that to do it, because the need is going to be great. And this is one piece of the puzzle that we can help try to put in place to build back what is a very broken Central Texas area right now.
Democratic State Representative and Speaker Tempore, Joe Moody of El Paso. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.